This is fantasy. It is the 1939 Individual World Speedway Championship final. This is what really happened. A door to another time opened. A door to a world that found itself suddenly at war. War against Nazi Germany was declared on Sunday, September the 3rd, 1939. The Individual World Speedway Championship final was due to take place on Thursday, September the 7th, 1939. The government gave express permission for this final to take place as a last defiant expression of normality in public life before the conflict with Germany began in earnest. Over 100,000 Speedway supporters packed into the Wembley Stadium, realising that it might be a very long time before they had the chance to gather together again in such large crowds. Realising that if things went badly in this new war, it might be that the British people might never gather together again to witness a sporting event of any kind. This was the reason the government agreed to let this meeting take place, because they knew that to do so represented the views and thoughts of the people of Great Britain, the thought that Great Britain would survive to win this war, just as they expected that the riders riding in this final would win in the spirit of justice and what was right. "Good evening," said a solemn Keith Owen from the Sky Sports studio in London. "Once again we find ourselves transported back in time to Wembley Stadium at the outbreak of World War II. How does it feel, Chris Lewis and Steve Johnson, to be in attendance at a world final that in reality should never have taken place?" "Once again it's a privilege to be in attendance at a meeting that seems to me to have been waiting for over 60 years to be run," said Chris Lewis. "It's one of those meetings that was left hanging in the air when war was declared," said Steve Johnson. "One of those meetings you would have thought ought to have been run after the war ended. The kind of meeting that each of these riders in attendance here tonight could reasonably have expected to have ridden in once hostilities ceased. They will finally get their opportunity to find out who fate would have decreed is the true Individual World Speedway Champion of 1939, confirmed Keith. As a reminder to all Speedway fans, here is the list of the riders who qualified for the 1939 final, their countries of origin and the bonus points they scored on the way to the final, followed by the racing order of tonight's meeting and the programmed heats. The riders are Corey Mill, USA, Bill Kitchen, England, Wilbur Lamoureux, USA, Eric Langton, England, Jack Milne, USA, Arthur Atkinson, England, Vic Duggan, Australia, Lionel Van Praagh, Australia, Alex Stratham, England, Jack Parker, England, Ben Kaufman, USA, Ron Johnson, Australia, Eric Chitty, Canada, Frank Very, England, and Eric Collins from Australia. Ove Lawson and the reserves are Malcolm Craven, England, and Frank Golden from England. "Thank you. There you have the details of it all, gentlemen," said Keith. "Who do we fancy for the 1939 World Champion?" "England have 6 representatives," said Chris Lewis. "Arthur Atkinson is tipped to do well. I think Bill Kitchen, Eric Langton and Jack Parker will have a lot to say about the destiny of the world crown." "Australia will be looking to Speedway's first world champion, Lionel Van Praagh, to pull something out of the bag," said Steve Johnson. "Ron Johnson will be expected to do well too. The newcomers to the world final, Vic Duggan and Ove Lawson, have a lot of people's hopes resting on their shoulders." "We can't discount Cordy Milne," said Keith. "He leads the field already on bonus points. If he rides to his capabilities tonight, then the other riders have to make sure they don't drop points and hope that Cordy Milne drops at least 3. Jack Milne and Lionel Praagh, the only 2 riders other than Bluey Wilkinson who can call themselves former world champions, are well in the mix too, with 6 bonus points," said Steve Johnson. "Personally, I would love to see a 3rd Australian world champion to add to the 2 champions you have now. Vic Duggan could do it, and so could Ove Lawson." Let's find out what Kelvin Tatum and Nigel Pearson's thoughts are on the outcome of this very special World Final. You're absolutely right, Keith, when you say the 1939 World Final is a special World Final, said Nigel Pearson. This might well be the last World Speedway Final that we will see for many a long years to come. I know that as Great Britain is at war with Germany now, there are 6 very patriotic Englishmen who are determined that one of them will wear the World Speedway crown throughout the war, hoping no doubt to be able to defend that world title when the next World Final is held. Who knows when? Problem with that, Nigel, said Kelvin, is that there is a very determined American called Claude Mill who desperately wants to win that world title too, not only because no one knows when the next World Final will be held, but also to put themselves on the same level as his brother Jack Milne, who, as we know, was Speedway's second world champion in 1937. Claude Mill wishing to swap places with brother Jack in this one, chuckled Kelvin, and Lamoureux wanting to go one place better than he did in 1937, after taking one step backwards to third place in last year's 1938 final, when he came in third behind Bluey Wilkinson and Jack Milne. The American trio have been very consistent in the last 2 World Finals, said Nigel, and you can see by the bonus points they have gathered that they mean to do as well in this World Final too. I think it's going to be a very tough meeting for everyone riding here tonight, said Kelvin. There are a lot of things at stake for a lot of people. There is a great deal of tension in this stadium, not only the usual pre-meeting tension, but also other kinds of tension too. Yes, the British government can have taken a great risk for allowing this meeting to take place, said Nigel, and we can only hope the meeting will be completed without any unfortunate incidents taking place. I noticed the stadium was surrounded by anti-aircraft guns when we arrived here earlier, said Kelvin. The searchlights are scanning the sky as we speak. I hope the viewers at home respect the dedication of the soldiers out there working diligently to protect the spectators, riders and everyone connected to the stadium, working hard to make sure this event takes place tonight under very difficult circumstances. I am sure that the concern about German air attacks is shared by the viewers at home, who no doubt are feeling the tension in the areas where they live, said Nigel, just as we are here in the City of London. Jonathan Greening is in the pits with the riders, hoping to get some insights into the thoughts of these riders on this very special night. I have Eric Langton here with me, said Jonathan. What are your thoughts on the circumstances surrounding this meeting, Eric? There is not a great deal to say about the situation Great Britain has suddenly found itself in, said Eric Langton. All I can say is that myself and the rest of the English riders are determined to concentrate solely on Speedway tonight and winning the world title for Great Britain. We know the Americans and the Australians are going to have a similar feeling to ourselves. They will want to win the trophy and hold on to it till such a time we can all be gathered here together again to ride once more for the world title. Let's hope that's very soon, said Jonathan. Let's hope so, said Eric Langton. Back to Kelvin and Nigel in the commentary box, said Jonathan, as it seems there is some interesting facts about the racing order in tonight's meeting. That's right, Jonathan, announced Nigel Pearson. Before racing gets underway, I will point out an interesting historical fact. In the individual world finals from 1936 to 1951 inclusive, the racing order format was different from the one adopted for the 1952 world final and subsequent world finals. In the first 6 world finals, a strange situation occurred where some riders had 2 rides on the trot and some riders had ridden 4 races when other riders had only ridden 2 races. Therefore, in the interests of fairness and in the hope of giving all the riders ample time to prepare for each race, this 1939 World Final will be run in the same format as the World Finals that took place after 1952. Seems to me to be a fair decision that the FIM has made, said Kelvin. It must have been hard going for some of those riders in those early World Finals. There was no break for them when they had 2 rides on the trot. They had to get out there and race as when they were called on to do so. So in effect, what we are getting here is a mixture of the old and the new, said Nigel. where the riders of yesterday are using a format of the future in a world final that never took place. Mystical or what? Chuckled Kelvin. Keith Owen rolled his eyes upwards in the Sky Sports studios and thought of his old mate Barry Briggs. It's time for the action to begin, announced Nigel Pearson. The moment we have all been waiting for has finally arrived. We have 3 English riders and an Australian out in the first race. And right from the off, said Kelvin Tatum, if any of these riders have aspirations of becoming world champion here tonight, they simply can't afford to drop any points. I know Arthur Atkinson is expected to do well, said Nigel, so let's see what happens in Heat 1. End of part 1.